Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. In today's video, we're going to be making this teapot box following on from the recent teacup and saucer. This box is 4 inches high and it's 5 inches across at its widest point. The style of the base and the lid have come from projects which I saw on Pinterest by SL Crafts. They were SVG projects, so I have no idea what size they were. I've used a similar style for the lid and the base, come up with my own sizes, and also come up with my own concept for the spout, the handle, and the knob on the top of the lid. I've made the base of the teapot out of 250 GSM, and then I've used the pattern paper, which was 230 GSM, to make the spout, the lid, and the handle, and the knob element on the top. So I would say if you're going to want to use the handle to actually lift and hold the box, think about what cardstock weight it is that you're going to be using for this. I have used a hexagon die in this instance for the base of the box, but as I do with my projects, I will give you some alternatives if you don't have a hexagon die and ways that you can come up with the base yourself. So please don't let that put you off the project. The project itself would be easy to resize in terms of the size of the base, the height of the teapot, etc., etc. And then you could just change up any of the sizes of the additional elements accordingly. So let's put the project together. We'll start with the base of the teapot, and for this you'll need 2 pieces of cardstock, which are 4.5 inches times 1/16 of an inch over 7 3/4, and we're going to use 1/16 of an inch on the base so that it will be a 1/16 of an inch on all sides, smaller than the lid, so the lid can then come down over the top. So 4.5 times 1/16 over 7 3/4, 2 pieces. And along the top edge, if you've seen any of my other projects where we do 1/16 of an inch, I'm going to use the same process. So we're going to put the first pencil mark at 1/16 of an inch under 2.5. Move that pencil mark along and score. Keep the cardstock where it is. 1/16 of an inch under 5 inches. Move the cardstock along to a track and score. Then we're going to rotate 180 degrees and score at 1/2 inch. So our final section will also be 1/16 of an inch under 2.5 inches. So you'll do that on 2 pieces. Get rid of your pencil marks. Fold and burnish along the score lines. I've got my tab over on the right hand side, and we're going to cut up each of the verticals up to the first horizontal to create the glue tabs for the base. And then when we get to the corner on the right, we're going to completely remove that. And then on all 3 base glue tabs and on this side glue tab, we're going to just take a wedge. We have our 2 pieces. I'm going to join the pieces together to create one long strip and then secure the other end to create the teapot base. Now clearly you could make the teapot taller, you could make each of the sections wider. So once you see how the piece comes together, you can change this up just any size that you want. That is joined together, and then I'm going to flip over this end, add glue onto here, and then flip over this end. So that is our base. Now one thing I am going to do now before I stick the base on is I'm going to add on my side panels. So I have 6 pieces. These are 3 7/8 by 1/16 under 2 3/8, but you could go for a more traditional border. So your piece would be 1/16 under 2 1/4 inches times 3 3/4 inches. So that's entirely up to you. So I'm going to add these into place. My side panels are now covered. So I'm going to use a hexagon die on my base, but if you don't have a hexagon die, you will see that over the past I've made lots of projects where I haven't used the die for the base. So an alternative would be to cut a circle. You could cut an oversized circle and then go in and trim around the sides. If you've watched the recent teacup video, you would have seen I explained how I did that on one of the teacups. Alternatively, you could stand your piece up, get it into the hexagonal shape, draw around the base on your chosen cardstock, and then cut away the sides. So there are alternatives to creating a base if you don't have a hexagon die. I'll just secure this into place. We're now going to make the spout and the handle. So if you haven't added your pattern paper on, you want to add that on certainly before you add the spout and the handle into place. We're now going to make the spout, and I'm going to make it straight from the cardstock which I've used as the pattern paper, and this piece is 3.5 by 3.5, and I'm going to work on the reverse. Along the top edge, make a pencil mark at 3/4 of an inch, 1¼ inches, 1 3/4 inches, and 2¼ inches. Rotate the piece 180 degrees and make a pencil mark on the top edge at 1/2 inch, 1 5/8 of an inch, and 2 5/8 of an inch. We're going to score between the various points, so if you have a marked track on your scoreboard you can use that, otherwise you'll need a stylus and ruler. We'll start from the first left hand pencil line, and we're going to score from the pencil line down to the bottom left hand side of the cardstock. Like so. Move along to the next pencil line, and we're going to score down to the next pencil line at the bottom. And we're going to do that with all 4 pencil marks along the top, joining them up to the pencil marks on the bottom. So your piece will have 3 sections in the middle, like so. Take the piece from the scoreboard, rotate the piece so that the 4 pencil lines nearer to each other are on the left hand side, and we want to measure along the score line. On the top score line, we're going to mark at 2¼ inches. The next score line down, we're going to mark at 3 inches. The next score line down, we're going to mark at 3 inches. And then the last score line, we're going to mark at 2¼ inches. Take your stylus, and we're going to join up the pencil lines. So we're going to join up the 2¼ inch pencil line on the top score line with the pencil mark at 3 inches on the next score line. Join up the 2 3-inch pencil marks, and then join up the 3-inch pencil mark with the 2¼ inch pencil mark on the last score line. So this is how our piece looks. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 score lines coming down, and they're joined at the bottom. Fold and burnish the long verticals. Take your scissors. I'm going to cut up the right hand score line and just remove that excess. Rotate to 180 degrees. I'm going to cut approximately 3/8 of an inch away from the score line on the right hand side, just to create a glue tab. Go to the edge of the cardstock. I'm going to rotate and shape that left hand end, and then just cut down to the score line, and I'm going to cut it in line with this base score line here, and then we can cut that excess away. Now I'm going to follow these base score lines and cut approximately 1/2 inch. Now we will need to reshape these, but this is giving us our starting point. So we look like this, and then we're going to cut up the score line to create our base glue tabs like so, and then we can fold and burnish along the base score lines. So if I bring the piece together, so this glue tab is going to adhere the piece like so to create our triangular spout. And then these glue tabs we're going to use to add the piece onto the teapot. So I'm going to fold these out of the way completely and get the spout glued together to start with. And then I'm going to fold the tabs in one by one and reshape them where one tab is going to be outside of the triangle. So on this one, I'm going to cut this like so. I want to keep as much of the tab as possible because I need something to glue the spout into place. But at the same time, so you can see this slightly overhangs the triangle. So I'm just going to reshape that slightly, and then I can cut this section off. And then if I bring this down, I can reshape these. In fact, if I do it this way, I can see how much is overhanging. Bring that down and trim down that as well. So that's our spout, and that is going to sit on the teapot like so. So you can position that anywhere on the side. If you would like the spout to be shallower, so it maybe sits in that angle, what you would do is, rather than measuring down the top and the bottom score lines at 2 1/4 inches, if you were to make that 2 1/2 inches, that would make your teapot spout sit more out like so. So I'm going to get these all glued together and then glue this onto the teapot. So I'm going to sit that there. So it's about 1 inch from the bottom and halfway across. So now the spout is in place, we're going to make the handle. And again, once you see how the handle comes together, you can resize that as you so wish. So the handle, again, I'm cutting straight into the pattern paper, and this is 3 3/4 inch times 3 inches. And along the 3 3/4 inch side, score up 1 3/4 inch, 2 inches, and 3 1/2 inches. Along the top edge, make a pencil mark at 1 1/8 inch and 2 5/8 inch. Rotate 180 degrees and do the same, 1 1/8 inch and 2 5/8 inch. Rotate the piece, and along the second score line, so the one which is going to sit at 1 3/4 inch, we're going to mark at 5/8 inch on the score line and 2 3/8 inch on the score line. Move down to the score line, which is at 2 inches, and do the same. So 5/8 inch and 2 3/8 inch. So we're now going to put our shape in. I'm going to mark everything with pencil to start with. If you have your piece in this orientation with the 2 1/4 inch score lines on the left and the right, we're going to make a pencil line from the pencil line at the top down to the pencil line like so. And then we're going to do the same the other side. So we're going to create a mirror image like so, and then do the same at the bottom. So that's going to give us the basic shape of our handle, and I'm now going to put in the markings so that I can cut the internal elements away. I've got a strip which is 3/8 inch, and I'm just going to lightly draw a pencil line all the way round so that I know what I'm going to cut away with my craft knife. Now you might want to have yours wider, you might want to leave yours as a whole piece. You don't need to cut the section away. So this internal section here is what I'm going to cut away with my craft knife, and I'm going to do the same on this right hand side. So I'm going to cut those sections away first. So that's those cut away. Fold and burnish along the score lines. Then I'm going to cut up this diagonal pencil line straight across between the two score lines and then back down the other side. So I'm just following the remaining pencil lines, and then I'm going to do the same here. So that is going to create my handle. So I'll get rid of all the pencil marks in the middle. So I'm going to add glue or tape to this section here and glue this together. And then I'm going to use that section to glue the handle onto the teapot. I'm going to use red liner tape for this. This is going to come around. And that is going to sit on top like so. Bend that over and just burnish that into place. And then this is going to sit on the opposite side. When you position the handle, just be aware that the rim of the lid that we're going to make is going to come down 3/4 of an inch. And I can just get my score tool down and just burnish that tape down. So that is the base of our teapot. So now we can make the lid. So the lid I'm making out of pattern paper. So this is a similar but slightly different one to the base. And you'll need 2 pieces which are 8 inches by 3¼ inches. And because we cut the teapot base to 16ths, we can cut this one to whole inches. So we're going to score along the long side at 2½, 5, 7½. Along the short side, we can score at 2½. Flip the piece over, so we're working on the reverse. I've got my 1/2 inch tab over on the right hand side, and we'll make a pencil mark at 1 inch, 1½ inches, 3½ inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, and 6½ inches. And you'll do that on 2 pieces. Fold and burnish. Take your scissors. If you have your piece in this orientation, we're going to cut up the first vertical to the first horizontal and then shape that bottom corner to create a glue tab. Now, you might want to do the next section with your scissors. You might want to put pencil lines in first so you've got something to follow. You might want to use a craft knife and ruler. But we're going to cut from this first pencil line at the bottom on the left, diagonally across to the top of its square. So we're removing that section. And we're going to do that all the way along. So the next pencil line at the top, we're going to cut down to the top right hand side of its square, like so. Move to the next pencil line and repeat. Move along to the next one and repeat. So you'll have 2 pieces which look like this, and we're going to join up both ends to create one single 6-sided piece. So add glue onto the first glue tab, join up the strip, and we're going to flip that over, make sure the piece sits parallel on top of one another. Add glue onto this glue tab, flip this end over and join up the piece. Bring in my teapot, sit my lid on the top. So you can either bring in opposite pieces. So for instance, that one would join onto that one would join onto that one, and that one would join onto that one, and you'll get that effect on your lid. Or you might want to fold in this one, bring over the next one, bring over the next one. So how you decide to glue down the top of the lid is up to you. So I'm now going to glue my pieces down. So you can do this on or off the teapot. So I'm going to have the piece pushed over at the rim, and let's just add some glue onto the back of this one and down the side like so. And that one is going to come over the top like so. I'm going to do that all the way around. add the glue onto the one that you're sticking down rather than the one that you're sticking to, because then if you do have any glue where it shouldn't be, it's not going to show. I'm going to just take that off, flip that over and just push that down. So that is the lid, and now we're going to make the knob, which is going to sit in the middle. So the final element for the top of the teapot is a piece of cardstock. Again, I'm using the pattern paper, 3 3/8 times 1 3/4, and I've scored along the long side at every 1/2 inch. So we're going to make a hexagon shaped top, and then on the short side score at 1/2 inch and 1 1/4 inches. Once you've folded and burnished, have the piece so the 3/8 of an inch section is on the right hand side. Remove the bottom right hand corner, top and bottom, because we don't need those. And then just take a small wedge from the glue tab, and then we want to cut up each of the score lines up to the horizontal score line. So we're creating our base tabs and our top tabs. So what we will do is we will make this one continuous piece, fold under the base glue tabs in towards each other, form the hexagon shape, and then use that to add to the top of the lid. Now, in terms of the top element, you can fold these in. You could add a small hexagon on the top if you've got one. You could add a circle on the top if you've got one. Add an oversized circle and then cut trim around the edge, as I suggested for the base. What I've done with this particular one is I've done it by eye. As we did with the lid, I've cut a triangle into the top element. I didn't measure, I just did it by eye. So I cut away so that this top flat section here was about 1/4 inch. And I did that all the way along. And then I've stuck it together in the same fashion as I did the lid. And it's just given the same effect to the top of the knob as the top of the lid has got. So that's an option. So I've added my red liner tape to the bottom, and that's going to sit on the top like so. So there is our finished teapot, and I'm really pleased with how this one has come out. So there we have today's project. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And until next time, thanks for watching.